it has stripes, it has horns. All different species, but banding study shows the same information. Is this one kind, yes or no? Oh, so how many went into the ark? Here's the wolf. He has 78 chromosomes. 78 short chromosomes. They are the foxes and the other canines. They can have from 30-something, 38 chromosomes to 78. If they have 38 chromosomes, then they're long chromosomes. If they have 78 chromosomes, they're short chromosomes. So they looked and they said, hang on a second. That's the same information that you have in the wolf. So, all the canines, and we know that they can even interbreed. If you take the dingo in Australia, why is it endangered? Because it breeds with a domestic dog. If you take the wolf and you take the coyote, if you take Ontario, the coyotes are larger than elsewhere. Why? Because they're a mixture between wolf and coyote. So, with genetic separation by putting them onto different chromosomes, sometimes they become infertile, but the information is exactly the same. Question: of all the wild dogs, all the wolves, all the coyotes, all the wild canines in the whole world, how many went onto the ark? One pair. That's it. Can you see the number of animals going into the ark just shrinking dramatically? Can you see that? All right. There's the dog race on the left over here. That's the variety you can get. That's built-in variety. On the right over here are wild animals. They're all different species, but they have the same chromosome banding patterns. They're one kind. One kind. Robertsonian fusion is another chromosome fusion. Mice, for example, have this. You have the house mouse, Mus musculus. You have the field mouse, Mus passiovinus. Who cares what they're called? It's just names to irritate students. But nevertheless, their chromosome numbers differ, but banding studies show the same information. You have jumping genes in the gene system. You can take a gene, cut it out, put it into another place, and instantly go from a small mouse to a giant mouse. Wow! So you just take a gene out, splice it into a position where it's read more often, and you have a giant mouse. Instantly. If you splice that gene one letter too far, what will the gene read? Has to be perfect. These are all mechanisms that are in the genotype. You either have to believe, boom, New York City, or you have to believe in a designer, because that's what we're dealing with. Chance or design. Giant mouse, small mouse. So, built-in variety in the gene pool, that's what you have in the dogs. All that built-in variety. Reproductive exchange, the fact that we are male and female. By the way, I'm looking at my clock. I've been motoring like a maniac, so let me just run this by you. The Bible says that Eve was taken from whom? Isn't that neat? Eve was taken from Adam. Now I want to tell you today that I have every single gene that it takes to be a woman. Every single gene that it takes to be a woman. Has a woman got every single gene that it takes to be a man? No. She doesn't have a Y chromosome. So ladies, you must have come from man and not man from the woman. Isn't that so? All right, ladies, you were taken from the side, not to be the head, but not to be trampled underfoot either. Equal partners. Equal partners. But you were taken from the man. It's the only one that makes any sense. It could not have been the other way around. It's impossible. So reproductive exchange. Independent assorting during meiosis. Remember, it can go this way, that way. That's the 80 trillion offspring that I could have produced. And then I have crossing over during meiosis. Such a complex mechanism that scientists are still boggled with how it works. It is so beautiful, the mechanism. It is so complicated. You cannot even believe it. Do you know what? You first have to unwind the DNA. Then you have to get an enzyme to cut the one strand. And then you have to get an enzyme to cut the other strand. Then you have to cross-link them. To do that, you have to turn it round. You have enzymes releasing the tension. You have enzymes attaching to either side of the DNA, and the DNA unwinds. Have you tried that? If I have a piece of string, two strings wrapped around each other, you take the one side and I take the other side, and you start unwinding. What happens in the middle? The knot gets tighter and tighter, right? That's what DNA does. That's what DNA does. Yet every time you replicate, you have to actually relieve that tension. Wow, how do you do that? Well, there's a ball-bearing joint enzyme in the middle that as you start pulling here on the sides, it cuts and allows free rein and then splices it together again. And as you pull some more, it goes carries on like it is such a complicated mechanism. And then you have enzymes running up and down. The one is adding at thousands of nucleotides per second, not making a mistake. A to T, A to T, A to T, G to C, G to C, C to G, and at a tremendous speed. I've got millions of genes. The job has to be finished within a few minutes when the cell divides. Not one mistake. Then I've got a whole host of enzymes coming afterwards called editase. Nice name, editors. Going tick, 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 tick. Checking, are there any spelling mistakes in this? Because we'd hate you to be cabbages once you come out, right? No spelling mistakes. And you must now believe that that came about by chance. It's your only choice because it's genotype. I want to tell you that every single one of those mechanisms is more complicated than what man has ever devised with all his ingenuity. And yet it came about by chance. So let's go to these creatures. Look at all these different ones. Do you have a problem with those birds looking all different after this lecture? No. But if you look at the human race, we say, where did this all come from? Well, look at them. Those are the women of the world, and I'm showing them to you first because, let's face it, they are far more attractive than the males. But I'd like you to note, please, that in the animal world, the male is the beautiful of the species. Any bird, you just look at the hummingbird or any creature, the male is the star. But in women, I guess it's just a little bit different. But she came out of whom? All right, they are the men. They might all look different, handsome as they are. There are some couples, and there are some kids. Now, kids are great to work with, because if you look at them, they're all cute, aren't they? No matter what race, what tribe, what nation they come from, they're all cute. So let's have a quick glimpse at this issue. Adam and Eve, they must have had the built-in variety for everything that we have on the planet today. Is that right? Yeah. So I would reckon they weren't snowy white, and they weren't totally black. They were something in between. And the capacity to get all of that was built in. One of them must have had brown eyes. Brown is dominant. It could have had recessive eyes of another color. And there could have been all the recessive genes for all the other colors. Maybe Eve also had brown eyes, but she could also have had blue eyes or any one of those. Today, if one parent is brown-eyed and the other one is blue-eyed, then you can have any combination provided that the father has recessive blue. All right? If both parents have blue eyes, that means they have the recessive gene only. If their child then has brown eyes, it means that the father is the postman. Okay? So Adam and Eve had every single gene it takes to make all the races of man. And had all the possible trays to make all the different races. Darwin comes along and he says, no, survival of the fittest. The persecutions and the racism that we have in the world Some of it directly linked back, like the